Hey guys, welcome to uh, TM Events Sword and Shield base set review. This time we're focusing on the V and Vmax Pokemon. My name's Jonathan, and I'm with TM Events, of course, uh, and let's just get in there. So let's see here. Um, like I said in the previous video, there's two different products that are going to be that were released in Japan that we're probably going to get combined as our Sword and Shield base here in English. We don't know quite yet, but we'll go over anything that we miss later. So let's move on here. It looks like every type has at least one VMAX Pokemon, so that's pretty good. So let's take a look here. Um, First up, we have Delmas V. Looks pretty sweet. I actually really like that art. Yeah. So Pokemon V are very similar to EX and GX Pokemon. That's a capital EX. Um, that they provide two, or they give your opponent two prize cards when knocked out. That's the V roll down here. Um, so let's see how Delmise is. Wrath of Wraith, 30 plus damage if any of your grass Pokemon were knocked out from your attack from damage from an opponent's attack. Does 90 more damage, so 120 for one if a grass Pokemon was knocked out. That's not bad. And then Grass Colorless for 200. Can't use Giga Hammer during your next turn. Um, for let's see. I don't see this actually being that good and expanded. Um, I just don't think the damage is there or the acceleration's there. Um, for standard, unfortunately, fire decks are craze right now with Welder being a thing. So I think Delmise will be more of a liability than a boon. So unfortunately, I would just put Delmise into your binder until the time is right. However, in a pre-release, GX Pokemon are good, just because their stats are so impressive. It's the way that I look at it is I divide the number of prizes by their HP, and it's basically Delmise is two 110 HP Pokemon that you have to knock out at the same time to um, to deal with. Okay, um, so I can see I can see you using Delmise in a pre-release deck. However, it would need to have a few um, grass Pokemon in it to make it worthwhile. Um, other than that, I don't think it'd see much play other than outside of it, just because the Giga Hammer attack, um, the detriment of not being able to use it consecutively, that's too much to deal with in a pre-release format. So run it if you have other grass Pokemon. Otherwise, just put it in your binder. Moving on here, we have Lapras V, and then we have Lapras Vmax, which are both beautiful cards. Well, let's start off with Lapras here. Let's see here. So we have Wave Back. Attach one water energy from your hand to this Pokemon, then switch. Okay, it's good energy acceleration starting out. It's never a bad attack, unless you don't have. Um, I guess you can switch even if you don't attach an energy, so that's a plus. Um, to retreat is kind of rough, but we have Air Balloon. You can check out the trainer videos in a link in the description. And then Ocean Loop 210 and return 2 water energy from this Pokemon to your hand. I don't expect Ocean Loop to be used, just because the VMAX attack is that much better. Um, but if you just get this one in a pre-release, I would definitely consider using wave back until you have about two, maybe one prize left, or your opponent has two, maybe one prize card left, while you just keep accelerating energy, and then force them to take this knockout on your Lapras as the last knockout of the game. Because you can effectively make it a 5 prize game if you make your opponent knock out 3 Pokemon, then knock out Lapras. And the the downside of putting two energy back into your hand, you can just reattach for the next turn, and then it's effectively putting one energy back into your hand, and you should be able to attack 4 times. And the HP of 210, you can expect somewhere around 60 damage a turn to be done to your Lapras, just on average. If I don't know if the power level, base power level for a format within a set has gone up yet, but you can average about 60 damage a turn. Of course, sometimes it'll be higher, sometimes it'll be lower, and the weakness to lightning may be a little scary, but I can see it happening. But Lapras Vmax is actually going to be played, I think, in all three formats if you can get it. In standard, there's a deck right now with Naganadel and Quagsire and Gmax Pump. 30 more damage for each water energy is just better Hydro Pump. Quagsire does 60 plus 20. This does 90 plus 30. So for the same amount of energy, you're doing 180 damage. That's good. And there's a Frost Moth in this set that has Deluge for your bench Pokemon for water energy. So you might not even run it in the Naganadel Quagsire deck for standard. You might just run it in the Lapras Vmax Frostmoth deck that just dumps a whole bunch of water energy on your Lapras and just see what happens. You to hit some critical numbers, you would need 1, 2, 3. 3 would be 180. 6 would be 270. So 207. So if you get 6 energy on your Lapras, 6 would make it 270, and then plus 10 from the Fine Band that's in this set would make it 280, which will knock out every tag team Pokemon except for Magikarp, Wailord, and the legendary birds. But you just have to attach one more energy to hit that number. So it's definitely doable. If you can, I would definitely try to get your play sets of Lapras and Lapras Vmax, because it will be good in standard and even in expanded. Like there's Archie's Blastoise, if that's still around. I haven't checked expanded in a while, but if Archie's Blastoise is still a thing, then you got this. Yeah, you got this attack. And there's another card that's Energy Reset. It lets you pick up all the energy you place down. You can max potion and then place it all back down again. So there's definitely a thing. Definitely some considerations to be made here. Additionally, HP of 320 is huge. It's going to be very difficult for a Pokemon to one-hit knockout 320 damage. Without using weakness. So, like, what is it? Pikachu Zekrom that hits for 150 won't get a one-hit knockout unless it has some damage modifiers, which is kind of nuts. And there's also a special energy that's floating around that gets rid of weakness, so that's always an option to play in these types of decks. Going down here, Wobbuffet V. Step back, switch all damage counters on this Pokemon. So it's damage swap. If you guys remember Mewtwo EX, that was played heavily when it was legal in standard, with Mega Mewtwo. With Shrine of Memories, actually, lets you, I think it even had 220 HP. I'll have to double check, but lets you swap damage counters that were attached to that Pokemon with your opponent's active. So the goal here is to figure out how much you can actually take before swapping. So in a pre-release, this is going to be nuts, because what you're going to do is you're just going to attach to Wobbuffet, right? and then just wait until the turn before they can knock you out, then swap the damage to them, and they can't do anything about it. So if you get Wobbuffet, I think you're going to win the pre-release. Unless they have some dark type Pokemon or Pokemon that can hit over 220 damage. Because if you play it correctly, you can never get knocked out. Shadowbind, 70 damage, can't retreat. It can be used, but I think the first attack, the first attack is going to be used more than the second attack. So options are good. It has a great first attack. 3 retreat is kind of awkward, but there is air balloon. Yeah, there is air balloon, so turns it into a 1 retreat cost. But if I pull this in a pre-release, I'm running Wobbuffet and 39 energy, personally. And I'm going to make my opponent one-shot me. Alright, so we have Stonejourner and Stonejourner V and Stonejourner Vmax, which are pretty cool Pokemon. Stonejourner says, Guard Press during your opponent's next turn, minus 20 damage, does 40. It's okay. With that, I guess that Fine Band and the Stadium Martial Arts Dojo, you can do base 60, but if you're behind on prizes, you'll do base 90, which is getting kind of ridiculous for a single energy attack. And then Mega Kick for 150. This is one of the Pokemon I think would be used with Beatty, because you attach for turn, and then you can pass or whatever, and then the next turn, you can attach and then play Beatty, and then now you're going to be able to Mega Kick, or you can go to Stonejourner Vmax and do 200 damage, okay? Which both are very good attacks. Because you want to average somewhere around 30-ish damage, 20 to 30 damage per energy attachment, for it to be to pay off your investment. In this case, you're doing 50 damage per attachment. In the VMAX version, you're doing 60, we'll say 60, 70 damage per attachment. I know it's like 66 and 2/3, but we'll say 70 damage, and this is 50 damage. So the evolution here, really, you're just getting an extra 110 HP. But it's still kind of nuts. But if you go second, the combo I'm envisioning is you start with impersonate Mimikyu. You attach your energy for turn, and then you can impersonate Beatty, attach energy to your Stonejourner, and then next turn you can, assuming your Mimikyu gets knocked out, you can attach energy again for turn, and then play Karate Belt, okay? And now all of a sudden your Mega Kick is now 2 energy for 150, which is 75 damage per energy, or 100 damage per energy. And so that combo there, that 1-2, where you start with Impersonate Mimikyu and Stonejourner, I think will let you get there. And then you also be behind on prizes at that time, which would make the damage 190 or 240. So it's something to keep an eye out on. And then if you run, was it Diancie Prison Star? It goes to 210 or 260, which now we're starting to get into some ridiculous damage range. In pre-releases, I think you're going to do okay with it. The 20 less will take your 60 average down to 40 average, just long enough so you can start Mega Kicking. As long as you get two knockouts and an attack on a third Pokemon, you're going to be ahead. Our next one would be Zacian. Now, Zacian, I think, is probably in the top 5 V Pokemon in the set. I don't think it's the best, but it's definitely not the worst. Intrepid Sword, you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck, put any metal energy you find to this Pokemon, then draw the rest. But you lose your turn, but you can do this on the first turn of the game. That's nuts. You can't attack, so might as well do this, right? Draw 3 cards or accelerate energy. Um, and then you can start Brave Blading as soon as turn 2, which is kind of nuts. A lot of decks can't handle 230 damage on turn 2. I'm looking at you. What are you looking at you? At least Malamar. Malamar decks will have a hard time dealing with this, just because it's going to be it's just difficult. But the downside that you can't use Brave Blade consecutively, it's rough. However, you can run Air Balloon on it, right? And by the time you Brave Blade, you can metal saucer or whatever, um, and set up a second one. You can swap in between to just continue Brave Blade, or you could run it in a Arceus Dialga Palkia tag team deck, um, and do 260, 270 with the Fine Band, and all of a sudden you're taking extra prize cards off of this attack, which is really good. Arceus Dialga Palkia also accelerates energy. So if you GX attack turn 1, or GX attack for your first attack, second attack do 180 with Arceus Dialga Palkia's attack, possibly get a knockout, take 2 prizes, maybe 3 prizes if you find a Dedenne, and then accelerate 3 metal to Zacian, and then next turn you can use something like uh, either like Custom Catcher or Great Catcher to pick off another another GX for game. I can see that happening quite a bit. In a pre-release, I think this is also pretty good because you draw cards, and and energy acceleration is also very good. So definitely keep your eyes out for Zacian. Get 3 to 4 of them and put them in your binder. It's just like the Solgaleo and Sun and Moon base. It'll find its deck, and I think ADP Arceus Dialga Palkia tag team is where it's at. Camerat V, Beak Catch. Search your deck for 2 cards, put them in your hand. It's pretty good. Double Computer Search, and then Spit Shot. Discard all energy. It does 160 to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So Camerat is in one of those weird spots. It's also a weird looking Pokemon, but it's good in the right format. If you can pick off Pokemon on the bench, if Dedenne is used a lot, you can use Camerat in a deck like Frostmoth, where you accelerate a bunch of water energy to your bench, right? Like Frostmoth Quagsire, you accelerate to your bench, you put it up to the active, you pick off a Dedenne, or you pick off a Pokemon that like something that's on the bench that needs to be picked off. Like maybe they're setting up a Mewtwo or something on the bench. Well, use this, soften it up, so the next attack you don't have to do as much damage. It's a very interesting Pokemon. I don't think the right deck is out there for it yet. Heck, this can even be used in Malamar. Malamar really misses like Necrozma GX that can do bench damage. You know, like to finish off like the Dennes and such. Now you can just come out with Camarant swinging, and just like, oh, you played a Dedenne, that's 2 prizes for me. Oh, you played another Dedenne, that's 2 more prizes for me. And watch and repeat until you win the game. Yeah, I think Camarant needs a deck that I think in the current known decks for Standard that are competitive, it's either going to be in Naganadel Quagsire or it's going to be in Malamar. In pre-release, this one's going to be, I almost forgot pre-releases. In pre-releases, this one's going to be a little difficult to use. Sure, you can probably pick off one attack, like get one prize with it. Use it only if you don't have any other It's splashable in any deck, but only use this as your final attacker if you do plan on using it. And the next up is Torkoal. Flame Pillar, 90 plus damage. Discard the top card of your deck. If it's a fire energy, this attack does 90 more damage. Oh, that's nuts. And then Steam Crash, 120. Discard 2 energy from your opponent's act. That's also very nuts. And I don't giggle that often about tax that much. 3 fire energy is really easy to get to. Um, it's a welder plus an attachment for turn. Now, when welder's not in format, this Pokemon V loses a lot of viability. But currently, welder is legal, and it's going to be legal for a while still. Um, I expect welder to survive the next rotation. So, and welder decks tend to play a lot more fire energies, therefore Flame Pillar does, on average, hit that fire energy more often. So I can see this actually working. But once you get to the Steam Crash, where you get to discard energy from your opponent's active, um, decks like ADP cannot handle this. Decks like Mewtwo cannot handle this that well. Because a lot of them don't run energy recycling. They just, once the energy's on the field, it's there. Once it's gone, it's gone. So those decks will have to adapt just because Torkoal exists. And if Torkoal sees any remote amount of play, then those decks do take a hit because they don't really play energy recursion or energy recycling. So that's really interesting, and I'm a big fan of Torkoal. I think this is another one of the top 5 V Pokemon in the set. More Pico and more Pico V. Vmax. Alright. So more Pico V, Spark 20 and 20, that's fine. You can pick off something that's 20 off, so that's pretty cool. Electric Wheel, discard energy, then hit and run. Sweet. So both of those attacks are pretty good. You can run it with Recycle Energy if you really wanted to. So that's always an option. A deck with like more Pico V, a bunch of Clefairy dolls, and yeah, more Pico V, Clefairy dolls, and maybe like Raichu tag team. I can see that working with this. Just a bunch of like bench manipulation, like Pokemon maneuvering. That's going to be a fun deck if you want to play that. So yeah, would this be good in a pre-release? Absolutely. Get the 2 energy onto it, hit and put something up in the active. Let that active Pokemon get knocked out, watch and repeat. Absolutely. Good card. More Pico Vmax. For 2 electric and a colorless, 180, and does 20 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. That's pretty good. Yeah, there's nothing bad about that attack. It's 30 more damage, so you're doing 60 per energy attachment. You could run something like Memory Energy, so you have a choice between Electric Wheel and Super Discharge. Bench damage is always good if you get the more Pico V in the pre-release and the more Pico V and the more Pico Vmax in the pre-release. I think you're going to win. Just because 180 and then 20 to the bench is devastating. So yeah, it's a very good card. And I think this is also within the top 5. This whole evolution line will be in the top 5. Alright, the next one we have is Sableye. Sableye says, put a trainer card from your discard pile into your hand, so it's like Junk Hunt. And then Wicked Claws, 10 plus damage. This attack does 60 more for each damage counter on your opponent's active. Holy crap. In a previous video, we talked about Galarian Zigzagoon and Galarian Obstagoon putting damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon. This is why. This counter, or this combo here, is super strong. It's weak to grass, which is strange, but they changed the the things where dark type Pokemon are weak to grass, but poison type are weak to fighting, which is kind of backwards when it comes to like video game stuff, but for card game it makes sense. Grass can represent bug, fighting can represent ground. Um, but holy crap, like and Beatty, in another video, the trainer video, I talked about Dark needing some energy acceleration to make it work. Beatty is one of those cards. You can get this set up in one turn and then start going nuts. It combos well with Shrine of Punishment, which is still going to be good because GX Pokemon are still going to be everywhere. So every time Shrine of Punishment ticks, that's an extra 60 damage. So it's like putting 70 damage for every tick of Shrine of Punishment, which is nuts. So yeah, the damage ramps up fast. If there are other Pokemon that spread damage in Dark type or even colorless type that can work with this, then by all means, that's great. I wonder if this can work in the ADP deck. It'll turn into 40 plus 60, which might help with some math. So that's something to look out for. This is another one of the top 5. So we got more Pico, we got Zacian, um, we got Torkoal, and now Sableye. And now we have Zamazenta here. Unfortunately, I think Zamazenta is not that good. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing shutting down Dauntless Shield. That's in the game right now. Because Mimikyu only stops EXs and GXs. In Standard, there's nothing that shuts off Dauntless Shield. So against VMAX Pokemon like Morpeko, Lapras, and Snorlax coming up, Zamazenta is a good answer. However, it's Zamazenta did get the short end of the stick. It didn't get any stick because freaking Zacian has the stick. So maybe that's the reason. It has Safeguard for VMAX, and then Assault Tackle, so it gets rid of the special energy. But most special energies that are used right now are going to be triple acceleration energy, which discards at the end of turn, and maybe aura energy. So we'll see. I don't expect Zamazenta to be used that much. And in pre-releases, this is going to be, it's going to be okay. The ability is not going to do anything, so you're basically playing it for Assault Tackle. So maybe not run Zamazenta if you pull it. Snorlax and Snorlax V. I think this is the best card. This evolution line is the best evolution line out of the format. Now, I'm going to start with talking about Expanded. Now, I don't play Expanded that much. However, Expanded is... There's a deck in Expanded in X and Y through the Roaring Skies era, which was Mega Rayquaza. Mega Rayquaza was one of the best decks in the format when it was released. And Mega Rayquaza said, do 30 damage for each of your bench Pokemon. Now, that kind of looks familiar here, right? 30 more damage for each of your bench Pokemon. But it has a base 60. It's Rayquaza plus 60 damage. And this is an evolution Pokemon. And it has 3 colorless as an attack cost. So you can run triple acceleration energy with it. So, and now there's another stadium that says you can have 8 bench Pokemon. So if you have 8 bench Pokemon and 60 base damage, you start out doing 300 damage with a full bench. And it has 4 retreat cost, which is pretty high. However, there's something called buff padding. Buff padding says, hey, guess what? You now have 50 more HP. So you have 390 HP on your Snorlax Vmax, which is insane. Now, if you need more damage, you're against another Snorlax Vmax. I don't. It's like, what does unstoppable force with versus an immovable object, right? What happens? Um, like if you need extra damage, you can cut it for choice band, which won't work for against other Snorlax Vmax, but um, against stuff like Arceus Palkia and stuff like that that likes to put fighting Fury belts on their Pokemon, it'll get you the extra 30 damage that you need for the knockout. Um, this is nuts. Um, I don't think anything that hits it neutrally will knock it out. Um, let's see, Lapras does what, 90 plus 30, and you have 390. So 300, that's what? You do 30 more, so that's 10 energy. You need 10 energy on Lapras to knock out Snorlax Vmax. Okay, you go ahead and put 10 energy on your Lapras, and I'll just bring up freaking Snorlax Vmax again and then knock you out with Max Fall. That's absolutely insane. Um, so I think this is going to replace Mega Ray and Expanded. There's already a relatively competitive Mega Ray deck out there, and it's just that plus 60 damage. So if there's a way, I don't think there's even a way that I'm boosted without knocking that knocks it out, other than like Stonjourner or VMAX, which, oh boy. Snorlax V. Um, let's see. 60 heal the same amount of damage you did. That's pretty cool. And pre-releases, this is going to be a pain in the butt to deal with, just because you expect about 60 damage each turn, and you're just healing that off every turn. So I feel sorry if you're playing in a pre-release and your opponent flips over this card. And then falling down 170 in sleep is a good finishing move. I think this is the best VMAX in the set. It's actually nuts. So that's out of the Sword and Shield set. So if we go to the V decks here, a lot of these have already been revealed. So let's take a look at them. Find a friend. Search your deck for 2 Pokemon, reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle your deck. Sweet. Um, I wouldn't put it on a V Pokemon. I think it's a little risky. But if this is in the set and you pull it for a pre-release, definitely play it. It's good. It'll help you set up your evolutions. And then 50 plus 20 for each bench Pokemon. Well, it's like Snorlax, but light. It's like minus 10 damage everywhere. So full bench will do 100 damage because you have 5 bench spots, plus 50, 150. 150 for 2 isn't bad. So I like it. It would be good for a pre-release. Standard, I don't think it would be good. And expanded, definitely not. It's too much of a liability. Let's look at Victini here. Spreading Flames, 3 fire energy cards from your discard to your Pokemon any way you like. Now, there was a Victini EX in the black and white era that had Turbo Energize. I ran a deck with that plus Reshiram Charizard, not Reshiram Charizard, but Reshiram EX. And it said search your deck for 2 energy and attach them to 2 fire energy and attach them to your Pokemon any way you like. This one's 3 from your discard, but there's a lot of ways to get fire energy in the discard. There's Heat Factory, there's not Ultra Ball, but there's like Quick Ball, there's Giant Hearth and stuff like that. This Victini is actually really interesting, and I think it's going to um, see play in standard. Just because Energy Burst, it does 30 times. It's basically Infinite Force Mewtwo, Mega Mewtwo EX. It does 30 for every energy attached to both Pokemon. So yeah, you need 13 energy on Victini to knock out Snorlax V with buff padding. But um, Victini V, because like Mewtwo Tag Team, they normally have 4 energy on it, so that's 120 damage. So with that, that's 180. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that you get um, a couple more energy on on your Victini to knock out like tag teams and such. So I like it. It's going to be good in pre-releases too. It punishes them for sending up their Pokemon to the setting up their active Pokemon. Keldeo, um, Wave Splash 40, Secret Sword 30 plus 50, or 50 plus 30 for each water energy. So it's like Lapras, but worse. Which, to be fair, if attack was good as Lapras, then no one would run Lapras. So it's a good non-evolution version of Lapras's attack, but Lapras Vmax is better. So unfortunately, I don't think Keldeo fits in anywhere. It If we're trying to replace an attacker in like the Nagquag deck, then Keldeo V like a base, and you need a basic attacker, then run Keldeo V. But in like the Frostmoth deck, you would run Lapras just because you're already running evolutions. So it has its uses. And a pre-release, it's good. If you get the 3 water energy on it, you're doing 140 and just goes up from there. So you're gonna trade some knockouts pretty easily for it. Tapu Coco V, Spike draw 2 cards. That's nuts. That's really good in pre-release format. Run it if you get this. Thunderous Bolt. During your next turn, this Pokemon can attack. It has free retreat though. So let's see here. Um, yeah, I like it. It's good. 200 HP is good. It does 200 damage. It's good. Electro Power exists in Standard and Expanded, so that damage can go up. Thunder Mountain also exists, so that cuts off one of the energy costs. Counter Gain also exists in Expanded, so that cut offs that. So you can do 200 for 1 energy. Also, Tapu Koko Prism Star exists, so you can do some interesting things with this card. I think it's all around a good card. It's not as good as some of the others, but it's a good card. Regirock V, 30 plus 10, so it has Outrage. 30 plus 10 though, instead of 20 plus 10. And then Rocky Tackle does 30 damage to itself, so it feeds its own revenge. Unfortunately, I think this is one of the worst V Pokemon that they printed. Um, for pre-releases, it knocks itself out. Damage isn't high enough unless you use a second attack. So it's going to be difficult to actually convert 2 to 3 knockouts to justify the 2 price card risk. In Standard, fighting is just a really awkward type, and I don't think there's a. I know there's what you might call it, Karate Belt. Um, but if you're using Karate Belt, you can't use Giant Charm, which gives it 30 more HP. And then, yeah, I just don't think it has enough, unfortunately. And I think that's all the Pokemon V. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear more from me. I'm definitely going to keep up on these through Sword and Shield, and look forward to VGC content and TCG content as tournaments and such are ran. Um, I do plan on doing some like deck building videos on and like what mindsets you need to do, like focusing on a goal. Is your goal too broad, too narrow, so on and so forth, and stuff like that. If you're in the Midwest United States area, Toledo, Ohio, and Findlay, Ohio is where I normally run events and judge events and play in events. So do come out, check out, say hi. It's awesome. Uh, all that fun stuff. I'm going to post some links to the pre-releases I'm going to be participating in, either as a player, as a judge, or a TO, in the description of the video. And like always, thank you for watching. and I'll see you guys next time.